Welcome to Meet the Press Now. I'm Kristen Welker in Washington, where President Trump is once again ramping up his effort to exert influence over elections in America ahead of the midterms, taking the extraordinary step of gutting the leadership at the Election Assistance Commission. Now, that's the bipartisan federal organization that serves as a guardrail for free and fair elections in America. And today, the president announcing he is refusing to sign bipartisan legislation to address housing costs because Congress will not pass his bill to overhaul voting laws. It's a bill the White House had previously called one of the most significant pieces of housing affordability legislation in American history. The housing bill will become law at midnight, though, without the president's signature. And the White House says the president will not veto it. But the president is denying his own party a victory lap on this bill and stepping on their midterm messaging on affordability, all while continuing to focus on an election overhaul bill that has no chance of passing. Meanwhile, the firings at the Election Assistance Commission are the first by President Trump since the Supreme Court granted him sweeping new authority to remove members of independent federal agencies. It's a decision the president heralded at the time as a major win for him and also his administration.
The right, and not me, it gives a president the right to do what the president should have the right to do. And it's very interesting. It's a big ruling. It's been going on for almost 100 years. They've been working on this, and you know that it comes down at my term is a very great honor, but it bestows additional powers, or maybe the same power, on the president. The president has the right to do this, and that has to do with a lot of agencies all throughout the system. So it's considered, you know, the biggest of the group, and I can understand that this has been going on for almost 100 years.
And today's developments come just days after the Justice Department threatened criminal charges against state election officials if they do not crack down on non-citizen voting, which multiple studies have found is extremely rare. NBC News' Julie Tsirkin joins me now from the White House. Julie, great to see you. Thanks so much for starting us off. So let's start right there with the president firing the final 3 commissioners on the Election Assistance Commission. What is your reporting? What are your sources telling you about why the president did this and what his goals are here?
Well, Kristen, he feels emboldened, plain and simple. A White House official actually hung that Supreme Court decision that you just talked about as a reason for why they feel like there's precedent to do this moving forward. The administration had also pushed back on Democratic concerns, prominent Democrats, including Leader Schumer, as you can imagine, Kristen, sounding the alarms about this move being done so close to the midterm elections. This is a commission that is really not too well known. It consists of 2 Democrats, 2 Republicans. One of the Republicans actually resigned several months ago. But now this move by the administration, by the president, means there is nobody to dole out funds, federal funding to states so that they can run their elections, nobody to test the voting equipment, to make sure that these states and localities are ready when the midterms come up. And that's just a couple of months away, Kristen. And the president now, there are fears, could replace all of those board members with people who are friendly to him.
Well, let me ask you, Julie, about this housing bill, which the president already upset Republicans by canceling the signing ceremony at the Capitol. That happened a couple weeks ago. Everything was set up for it to go forward. What has the White House's message been to congressional Republicans who want to campaign on this bipartisan housing bill ahead of the midterms, particularly those, Julie, in swing districts?
Yeah, well, it's such an important question. This really is the biggest thing that Republicans, Kristen, have to campaign on into the midterms. The issue of affordability has proven to be one that has been so potent, not only in Republican circles, also in Democratic circles. Of course, we saw Mayor Mamdani's victory, and that's something the president paid attention to. And that is why that after calling, especially for that institutional investor piece, Kristen, that's that part of the bill that essentially prohibits, makes it much more difficult from Wall Street to come up in and buy all those single family homes that drive the prices for millions of Americans. That's what the president asked for back at the State of the Union. A number of White House officials over the last couple of weeks and months have told me, have urged, even despite the president's statement saying he doesn't really care about this bill, that he wants it done. Now the president saying, I'm not going to sign it into law, but it becomes law anyway. And so when I talked to a senior Republican leadership aide just this morning, Kristen, they told me we did our job. Republicans are going to say that they passed a monumental piece of housing legislation, that they are addressing the affordability affordability issue. What the president does is not something that we can control. Kristen?
All right. Julie Tsirkin starting us off from the White House. Julie, thank you so very much. Really appreciate it. Joining me now is Republican Congressman Mike Lawler of New York. Speaking of swing districts, Congressman, thanks so much for joining us. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, Kristen.
So before we get into the midterms, let's just talk about this housing bill. You're a co-sponsor of the bill. The president saying he's not going to sign it, but he's also not going to veto it. But do you think the president's making a mistake by not signing this bill, Congressman?
I do. I've said this repeatedly. I think the president should sign it and should declare victory. This was a bill that we worked hard on with his administration, with a Republican-led Senate and House, and we're able to get broad bipartisan support. And most of the provisions in the bill are led by Republicans. There are a few Democratic provisions, but this is a big win on the issue of housing, which I've said repeatedly is one of the biggest drivers of unaffordability in America. It's the first comprehensive bipartisan housing package in 36 years. And from my vantage point, it does a few things. Number one, it increases supply. We're 8 million units underbuilt nationwide. It cuts red tape significantly. It increases access to capital and especially reforms community banks, which is critical to get more money into the hands of home builders and buyers. And ultimately, it will help reduce cost. When you look at my district, for instance, Westchester County, the average home value went from $700,000 to $1.1 million over the last 5 years. That's a massive increase. That makes it very unaffordable for a lot of families, especially young people. And the average age of a first-time home buyer, Kristen, is now 40 years old. I'm going to be 40 in September. I bought my house at 28. So we have a lot of work to do on the issue of housing. I think it's one of the biggest issues impacting the American people. And this is a big bipartisan win. And I certainly, as I did a few weeks ago, encouraged the president directly to sign it. I'm glad he's not going to veto it. But I do think this is a big win. And I certainly, for one, will be campaigning on it. 6 of my bills are in the final package.
Well, and to the point that you're making about housing really being at the crux of affordability, I do want to play a little bit of what President Trump said about this very bill last month. Take a look.
Here's what I would like to say. Much more than a bill, that big deal. It's a yawn. Some people say it's wonderful. To me, compared to the Save America Act, just about everything is a big yawn.
It's a big yawn compared to the Save America Act, Congressman. Look, I know you support the Save America Act. That's the president's effort to overhaul elections, some of the election guidelines in the country. But do you think it's more important than the housing bill? I mean, what would your response be to him?
Look, my number one priority for my district has always been the issue of affordability and the cost of living. It's why I fought so hard to lift the cap on salt and deliver real tax relief to my constituents. You know, my constituents saw anywhere from a $5,000 to $20,000 tax refund because of the working families tax cut, no tax on tips, no tax on overtime, no tax on Social Security, and the increase in SALT cap from $10,000 to $40,000. But housing is a major issue, along with energy prices. You know, Kristen, in New York, utility rates are up 58% over the last 6 years. That has nothing to do with Washington or what's happening in the Middle East, and everything to do with policy out of Albany, where they shut down nuclear power, shut down natural gas, block pipelines. I want to work on permitting reform. That is something that I think we can get done this Congress as well. And I've said repeatedly, and I've said it to the president, housing and permitting reform are the 2 biggest things we can do to address affordability. I understand his position on the SAVE Act. I support, photo ID. I support proof of citizenship. But the fact is that when we're talking about the American people and what they are most concerned about, most Americans are concerned about the cost of living, and that remains my priority and my focus.
Well, when the president refers to the housing bill, which, by the way, housing, as you're mapping out, a part of the American dream as a big yawn, does that undercut your efforts to win in this swing district?
No, look, I've been very clear on my views on this, and my constituents know who I am. It's a district that Kamala Harris won, Joe Biden won. There's 80,000 more Democrats than Republicans, but I've gone into every community in my district. I've done over 2,000 in-person events over the last 3 years. I've closed over 9,000 individual constituent cases, brought back over $120 million to my district between benefits due to constituents and community project funding. I've passed dozens of bills. I've been rated among the most bipartisan and effective members of Congress repeatedly. So, I'm going to run on my record. I'm going to run on addressing the issues that matter to my constituents, and I'm delivering for them. And that's what I'm proud of the work that we've done.
I do want to get your take on the president firing the Bipartisan Election Assistance Commission. Republicans have long argued for fair elections. How do you think removing those commissioners just a few months before the midterms impacts people's confidence or lack thereof in the election process, Congressman? Do you agree with the move or do you disagree with it?
Well, obviously, the Supreme Court decision gave the president the authority to do it. I would not have done it at this moment. Heading into the midterms. But elections are administered at the state level, and I have full confidence in the state of New York to administer the elections. It is bipartisan in New York, one Republican, one Democrat in every county, and the staff are co-equal. They do a great job of administering the elections, so I am fully confident in what's going to happen in November, and I look forward to winning.
Very quickly, Chuck Schumer saying that this is to further seize control of the election process. He says whether or not there is any impact from the decision, it is the appearance of the president meddling in the election process. Do you agree with Chuck Schumer in this instance, given that you're saying you would not have taken this action right now?
No, look, I don't agree with Chuck Schumer on just about anything at this point. He's proven himself to be hyper-partisan. He was fully in favor of Graham Plattner as the main Democratic nominee until he wasn't. So, frankly, anything Chuck Schumer says is entirely political at this point.
Let me ask you big picture about your race. As you well know, the Cook Political Report considers your district, the 17th, to be the only true toss-up district in New York. Democrats have picked a combat veteran, Kate Connolly, to go against you in November. What's your strategy, Congressman, to pull out a win in November? You think you can do it?
Oh, for sure. Look, I've won 3 times in 2-to-1 Democratic districts. I am from the district. I've lived my whole life here. Kate Connolly parachuted in here at the behest of national Democrats to run. And while I respect her service, the fact is she served on the Biden administration in the NSC during the fall of Kabul and Afghanistan and the terrorist attack at Abbey Gate as the director of counterterrorism. She'll have to answer for that. In addition, the fact is, whatever she calls herself, whether it's a moderate or a progressive, she does not disagree with the views of the Democrats that are winning in New York. She supports abolishing ICE. She supports sanctuary cities. She supports open borders. She supports increasing taxes in the largest tax increase in American history. So at the end of the day, there will be a very clear contrast between my record and hers, and I look forward to it. And frankly, Kristen, I challenge her again to 6 televised debates, and I would welcome you, Kristen, to host one immediately. There's no reason why we should wait until October or late September. Let's get it started now. This is one of the most competitive races in the country. It will determine control of Congress. And, she likes to tout that she's a combat veteran. She's called me a coward multiple times. Let's go. Let's debate.
All right. Well, we're going to track it very closely. And as you know, I like a good debate, Congressman. So let's see what happens. Congressman Lawler.
I welcome it anytime, Kristen. Let's follow up.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thanks so much for being here. I really appreciate it. And I do want to turn back. Thank you, Congressman. I do want to turn back to the president's gutting of the Election Assistance Commission. Joining me now is Matthew Weil. He's a former staffer at the Election Assistance Commission and is now vice president of the Bipartisan Policy Center. Thank you so much for joining me. Really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
So let's just talk big picture here so that people understand exactly what we're talking about. What is the Election Assistance Commission? What does it do? Why is it so critical?
Yeah, the Election Assistance Commission was set up after the 2000 Florida election, when there was a realization that the country really needed to upgrade its voting systems and its voting processes. So the EAC, over its 2 decades of service, has doled out about $3.5 million in grants to replace punch card machines, lever machines, to upgrade security, both physical and cyber. It sets the guidelines by which we test the election technology. It puts out reports, it collects data. So it's really the voice of election officials, state and local election officials in Washington for when these debates over election administration happen. It works with Congress, it works with all the administrations, and it really provides a bipartisan look at what can modernize voting for all Americans.
Can the EAC function effectively without any commissioners?
So there has been a point in the EAC's history where they did not have any commissioners. So from 2011 to 2014, we also had no commissioners. They had all resigned or they had all taken other jobs at the same time. And so at that time, the EAC was really hamstrung. They couldn't do much, but they've changed a lot of the processes. So at this point, most things that aren't policy related, so not the changing of the guidelines for election system testing, but the testing itself can still happen. So things like that can happen if the Congress appropriates election security grants. Those can be doled out to the states. So the EAC can still function, but what it's lost is its best emissaries to go out into the country, learn what's happening in all of the counties, taking that knowledge to other counties so that we can improve voting all over the country.
Now, you have said that firing the commissioners won't have necessarily a large impact immediately. At what point do you think it could start to matter? What's the timeline look like here?
Yeah, the EAC at this point, whether it had commissioners or now that it does not, was unlikely to make an impact on any voter's experience this November. The timelines for a lot of these changes are quite long. So I know the president has shown a willingness or an interest in updating the certification requirements for voting systems. That process is laid out in statute, it's laid out in regulation. It includes numerous statutory boards that are represented by all the states in the country. It's represented by the disabilities community, the military community. All these people have input into changing things like that. And then there's a public comment period that takes about half a year. So again, at this point in the election calendar, the EAC was not going to have much of an impact on any individual's vote. Where it starts having an impact is if we do want to upgrade those systems, that process has to start now because it takes a long time. We're even late in the process if we want to update something for 2028. So really at this point, with no commissioners that are confirmed, you're looking at a long timeline to any kind of updates to the voting system guidelines, if that's the interest of this administration.
All right, Matthew Weil, thank you so much for joining us and for your insights. We really appreciate it.
We thank you for watching. And remember, stay updated on breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or watch live on our YouTube channel.